Hi everyone, welcome to a new episode of Carolyn Talks YouTube channel / podcast where I am your host, film culture critic and journalist Carolyn, and I speak to film creatives around the world about their work in the industry and what inspires them. And today I'm very happy to be joined by writer and director Fia Perera to talk about her new feature film Mermaid, which is showing at the Sunnyside Film Festival this year. And Mermaid is a film about a young girl, Cassie, who is gender fluid. She's discovering what is it she's discovering? Because no, she knows exactly who she is. You know, she knows that she identifies as a girl and that she wants to live her life as a girl, but she's facing obstacles in her life. You know, she's being bullied at school. Her father doesn't understand her. Her father is all confused and he's feeling alone because his wife died, so he doesn't know how to raise a child that he raised as a boy who identifies as a girl. But then there's also Pepper, a drag queen who's very I wouldn't say she's antagonistic and combative. She's just very world weary, you know. So she has very little patience and time for people who don't already accept her, who already don't fit into her space. So it's about these two people coming together and trying and finding family. And like found family is one of my favorite tropes in fiction. I love found family stories. I really do. So this film very much fits into that. And we'll talk about the theme of mermaids, which I think is interesting. But first of all, Fia, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks, Carolyn. Gosh, I love how you described it. And it just, and that really touches my heart that this film is, I wanted to make this movie because for so many reasons, but it is about finding your family, your biological family and finding the family that supports you in the community. Yeah. So.
Yeah. And you bring this film actually, no, before we begin talking about the film,
Sure.
I looked a little bit at your filmography in the past, and you have you have a documentary that you did, Paul and Trish, which talks about she's both Paul and she's both Trish, and that fits into the narrative of what Mermaid is. I kind of feel like you did Paul and Trish and you were inspired by Paul and Trish to write the story of Mermaid, because Paul and Trish, there's Paul, who identifies as a man, and he's very well known in the art and music industry. But then there's Trish, this other side of Paul, who is a woman and fully involved in her femininity and as the more artistic side of Paul. You know, there's the business side of Paul, and then Trish is the artist side of that. So talk to me first about doing this documentary, Paul and Trish, because I do feel like that's a really good entry point for Mermaid, or if anything, Mermaid could kind of work almost as an entry point for Paul and Trish, because you kind of do deal with the duality and of identity, you know, and of gender expression.
Absolutely. So it's very interesting, Carolyn. I've been working on, first of all, Mermaid she's my passion, was my passion project. And I never had human kids, but this is my little girl, and she's out now swimming. She's starting to swim. But I started working on Mermaid. It was actually called Pepper before. The bottom line is I've been working on this particular piece for 10 years, 11 years. And so while I was working on that, one of my boyfriends at the time was very good friends with Paul and Trisha, and said, I was living with him in Ventura, and I had hung out with Paul a number of times, and Paul is just an incredible, the persona, as you can imagine, so funny, interesting, all the things in the documentary, and just a great character. And so Adam just asked me, he said, why don't you do a short documentary about Paul and Trisha? And I said, do you know Paul? Do you know Trisha? This is not going to be short. So we made, I really was interested in the duality of their gender and the fluidity of Paul and the artwork, and how they could go back between Paul and Trisha and have two different ways of painting. And so it was interesting. So it was like kind of dovetailed back into the theme of being, the whole LGBTQIA theme, and the trans kind of like this a child, and the whole purpose of Mermaid, finding your tribe. And that's exactly what Paul and Trisha talk about in the film as well. So yes, they complement each other.
Because and I think when the film Mermaid starts with Cassie, who's 10 years old at this lake, and you start the film very heavy. where is
Mhm.
the child trying to
Mhm.
attempt suicide by packing her backpack full of rocks, and she's in the lake, and I thought it was a very heavy way to start the film, because like people would think
Mhm.
something like that would come later in the film, but you straight up off the bat said, no, this is a story that is very much about the emotional
Mhm.
toll that is taken on children in a society that doesn't fully understand them but
Yes.
judges them nonetheless. So talk to me about starting the film there, because I didn't get a chance to watch Paul and Trisha, but I did watch the trailer and I read a bit about it. And the tone of Paul and Trisha is very like, because that is who Paul and Trisha is, like that they're very happy, they're very in touch with their not only their sexual identity and their identity, but just like their artistic side, it's like that helps them
Mhm.
to be very expressive. But you start Mermaid very, very heavy, especially for a film that is centered around a child, like Cassie's just 10.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it's one heck of a way to start a movie, but it's also like they trying to kill themselves, or are they trying to go see the mermaid? That's the question we can ask ourselves, right? I mean, it is intense. It is
Mm.
intense, but it also, but that's then they meet Pepper, and then they're on this beautiful journey. And so, to compare thematically, and the characters are very different. Paul is 80 years old.
Yeah.
Paul and Trisha, they've lived their lives, and we could probably do 10 documentaries about them. It has not been easy for them. It has not. They've dealt with a lot of things, but Paul has a very strong spiritual foundation
Mm.
with Yogananda and all that, and is very has a beautiful way of letting things go, and acceptance. But it is not easy for them, for Paul and Trisha, nor for their trans friends, that
Yeah.
many of who are living in secrecy because they're too afraid of the repercussions. Now, we have it in Mermaid. There's a 10-year-old child that is feeling isolated and alone, and they want to be accepted, and they have nowhere to go. So it does start, in that way that is darker. But we go from the dark, how I thematically, and if you really look at visually how I shot it, it goes from dark to light.
Mm.
You
Yeah.
see when Cassie's in the club, and and it's like Alice in Wonderland, Charlie in the Chocolate Factory. Oh my gosh, look at all these things here. And then it opens up her world of when she sees who she can be, and the people that really see her, like Pepper and Cherry and the other people who really see her as who she wants to be. And then, of course, I don't want to give it away, but the father's beautiful coming to his transformation. So I think it is it's a movie that is going to get a lot of different reactions, but the bottom line is, this is the reality of when kids are not supported, and they are feeling isolated, and they have no one to support them, according to the Trevor Foundation. So kids are, if they don't have that support, they are, there's such a high percentage of kids that will attempt suicide. Now, Mermaid is not about suicide. It's about really allowing, helping, and coming together for these
Yeah.
kids and for the family. But yeah, I think it's a very effective way to open the movie. But it's also, then you have some comedy in there with Pepper.
Mm.
So
No, and
yeah.
I do agree. Yeah, the film does get very like what's going to the club. The club is very much, as you said, it's like a wonderland. It's all these bright colors, the bows, the confetti, the
Mhm.
sequins, and the glitter, and all of these things. But I do think it's important that the film does acknowledge the psychological effects.
Yes.
The psychological toll that it takes at school, socially.
Yes.
She's in a town, a small town,
Yeah.
where people, because she doesn't have anyone else that she knows of anyway
Yeah.
that identifies the same way that she does,
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
she only knows once she meets Pepper. But like
Yep.
at her school, she doesn't know if there's any other trans kids, she
That's
doesn't know
right.
if there's any queer kids, if there's any gay kids, because those kids themselves are feeling pressure to perhaps hide
Yes.
who they are. So that
Mhm.
she doesn't have that sense of community, and like her dad is so, again, caught up in his grief about his wife. He's still missing
Yeah.
his wife, and he's and
Mhm.
he's he wants things to he couldn't control the loss of his wife, so he's trying to control
Mhm.
what he sees as the loss of his son. you know, so he's
Yes.
trying to keep his son the
Yep.
way that that
Hmm.
Cassie was when when her mother was alive, you know. So like
Yeah.
that's the environment he's trying to keep. But so I think
Hmm.
it's important that you do show like these are all the social constraints and psychological and
Hmm.
mental and emotional toll that all of these
Yes.
kids go through because
Yep.
adults, for one thing, are not making the environment safe and comfortable for them to be who they are.
Yeah, that's exactly, Carolyn, that's exactly it. And I had a lot of discussions, although I didn't, I was very clear that the place is emblematic of many places in this country and the world, right? And that they don't have, that Cassie, she doesn't have a safe space for herself. And, and the father says when he's, cutting her hair or taking off the makeup, says, this is dangerous
Mhm.
and I don't like it. And if your mother were here, and he's afraid. And what was clear is that I didn't want to create a character that was cliche. I wanted him, he's afraid for her.
Yeah.
But yes, I've had numerous discussions with a principal of the high school. That was actually a high school that we used to kind of be the elementary school. And she was saying that she has to have all these conversations about the bathrooms and how the kids identify. And so people are all, they constantly creating a safe space for these children, because now more than ever, this is being eroded with all the laws. I mean,
Mhm.
you have in different states now where trans people can't be identified on their driver's license. It has to go back to their biological gender, which is,
Yeah.
you're basically, you're erasing that person, you're discounting that person. This is really, really dangerous. And all the stuff that just putting out false information about, that's just continuing to fearmonger around these issues and target these children, that just need to be seen, loved, and supported, and their families. I did a lot of research with for the years working on this movie, of parents that lived in fear of, if their kids, their trans kids, or even queer kids, would be okay when they come to, come and go from school. Are they going to be all right? And the bullying is it's a terrible thing. And um, it happens. Still is happening in so many schools and so many places. I mean, I have friends that a trans friend of mine said she was chased out of a town, just trying to walk her dog, and these guys followed her with baseball bats in their truck. Really scary. So you can imagine if that's happening to adults in certain states, you can imagine what's going on with kids, and they have to live in secrecy. And so Cassie really is in, sneaking out, doing all these things, hiding the clothes, because they know that their father won't, it's hard for them, is going to be, won't accept it. So yeah, it's a scary time for kids that identify as LGBTQIA and their families.
It is a very scary time because watching
Yeah.
this film made me think of how when I was growing up in the Caribbean, and it's so funny to me because I was born in 1983, so I'm an 80s 90s baby, and like back then it was so common for girls to be called tomboys. You know, like
Yeah.
my sister and I, we were tomboys. Like we wore the baggy pants, the baggy shirts, you know, but we also wear
Yeah.
like ultra feminine clothing and stuff when we were going to church. But like it was so common and accepted for
Yeah.
girls to switch between dressing more boyish and as well as feminine. And we
Right.
saw it in films, you know, it was in films and
Yeah.
like Clueless, you know, and like She's All of That, all of these things. Then again, thinking about She's All That was actually thinking about it, She's All That was went from the girl become from being a tomboy to being ultra feminine to make her more. Then again, that's a whole other different discussion. But
Yeah.
but your film made me think about all these things, you know, about how
Yeah.
things like that's. I always say like society is regressing backward, you know, because like we
Yes.
were tomboys and like tomboys were fine, and all of a sudden being a tomboy is bad. You know,
Right.
and it's not even if you necessarily identify as queer, but it was fine to wear baggy jeans. It was fine to wear baggy pants and clothes and you
Hmm.
know the big boots and all these stuff. But now it's not, because now it's not, the whole idea is about being ultra feminine. And that's why where I find a character like Pepper is so interesting. You know, like Pepper is played by Arturo Luiz Soria. And Pepper makes an interesting comment the first time
Mm.
that he meets Cassie. And this is where Cassie, he's saved Cassie, taking Cassie back home and like giving her a bath and clothing and stuff. And Cassie's on the bed, and Pepper explains to Cassie, "Oh, I'm a drag queen. I dress up and I dress glamorous for entertainment to entertain people." And Cassie's like, "Oh, but don't you want to be a woman?" And then Pepper's like, "And what? And lose my paycheck?" And I thought that was such an interesting comment, because he's like, it's like talking about how society is fine with men dressing up as women for entertainment, but if Pepper were to identify as a woman, Pepper identifies
Yes.
as a man. He's a drag queen, and like he puts on his feminine persona for his entertainment, and he's in touch with his femininity. But for entertainment, his work is to be a woman, and
Mhm.
and like people are fine accepting Pepper within a certain constraints doing that.
Mhm.
So I
Mhm.
thought that statement was interesting, because if you look at it
Mhm.
throughout history, like especially in like age, it's always been custom for men to actually
Yes.
as women in Hollywood, in the golden age of Hollywood,
Yep.
men dressed up as women to perform on stage and in operas, and in
Mhm.
Broadway plays and in
Mhm.
film.
Oh yeah.
And in Asia, you have the Kabuki theater in
It's been
Japan,
going on for hundreds and hundreds of years
right?
that men have been playing women's roles, and even men that were in the Navy, and there were all those plays were very talented drag.
Mhm.
I call them drag artists, not drag
Yeah.
queens. Incredible performers, and so it was very accepted, and the drag artists that I've met that have influenced me as a performer. I did many solo shows in New York, and I met them, and just revered them, and would perform in the different venues like Don't Tell Mamas and stuff. They are true performers, and also just so supportive of other artists and women. And one of my favorite movies, then this is an inspiration for the character of Pepper. I don't know, Carolyn, if you've seen the documentary Paris is Burning. And that documentary,
I haven't watched it, but I know of it. Yeah.
you have to watch it, because and that was the impetus for Pose. But that the
Mm.
idea that this fabulous gay black man, is a mother to all these children that left their families, because they were thrown out of their families because they were queer, gay, trans, whatever. And Pepper LaBeija provided this beautiful space for them, and also helped them go to school, all these things. And so to me, I feel like Pepper is the ultimate mother in Mermaid. And the fact that now in this day and age that people on the other side are demonizing or weaponizing drag artists, saying they're influencing children and all that stuff for in negative ways, it's just preposterous, when that couldn't be far further from the truth. We have people that are just so supportive and loving and kind to the community, and entertaining, as we've seen entertainment for hundreds of years. That's it. And which brings me back to, I made this movie not as a political it's not a political piece. It's not a trans rights movie. It's a movie about a coming of age story about a child and about a family coming together in a community. And it has transformation and it has sharp edges. But at the end of the day, it's triumphant and positive. And I didn't want to do something that was so, I'm walking a very fine line here. And I didn't want to, I wanted to keep it to the love too that the father has, that Pepper has, despite this is a very hard thing to care for a child that's not your child and to take all those risks. But at the end of the day, if you see somebody struggling, be a Pepper, reach out your hand and pull them up.
Yeah.
Like Pepper doesn't hesitate. Pepper jumps in the water, but Pepper is always doing that. And that to me is the ultimate mother. Whether you're gay, you're straight, you're trans, I don't care. Be a mother to a child. Be loving and kind to another person. It's about coming together for community now more than ever.
Yeah, and we have time for one last question. So the question that I was interested in the theme of mermaid, because a mermaid, like I never really thought of it in as a motif or as a analogy for like trans identity, but I do see it because on the surface they're human above the water, and then below the waterline they're something else. They're another creature. They're a fish. So like they're this being that is caught between transformation. Between being either they're not completely human, they're not completely fish. And for this film is like you were talking about how people again are caught between identities, not necessarily because they don't necessarily who they are, but because society is asking them to choose either be this or be that. And it's like, why can't they just be both? So I wanted to ask you about that, the theme of like mermaid as a motif, because I noticed that in the costume design out there's a lot of sequins and scales and like of like a fish scale, and that comes through also in the production design. And I wanted to ask you about that motif, and in discussing it with Devyn McDowell, who plays Cassie, and with Arturo, like how you guys figured out what you wanted the mermaid idea to be in this film.
Well, it's very interesting. There's a wonderful docuseries called I Am Jazz with Jazz Jennings. And Jazz talks about, Barbara Walters interviewed her, and Jazz is a trans girl, a woman now, and talked a lot about with the identification of mermaids because they have it's the embodiment of the feminine and the masculine in one person, in one being, and which you beautifully, eloquently just said. And I'm very interested. It's also water is water is fluid. So how they identify and going through life is very fluid, but yet water connects all of us. We're 75% water ourselves. We are all cellularly on a cellular level connected through water globally, and also the fluidity. So it's all kind of tying it together. We're all connected. We're all one. We're all together. And so I really wanted to create that motif, but also that the mother, also the idea that the mother is this mermaid that creates that kind of going back to the beautiful place where they felt supported and with them. So the mermaid is emblematic of many kind of themes, just the gender fluidity, the tying in everybody, we are one, and also the mother, the feeling of the mother and wanting to swim closer to her, but then realizing, no, I can swim and be who I'm, my mermaid, the mermaid that she would want me to be, on my own terms. And so I was very specific about the tone and the look of the movie and how I wanted it to be. I storyboarded it to, I had all my mood boards, everything done. I'm very I love prep because for me, that's the ultimate creative. I was very hands-on. I'm a very hands-on director in terms of the look and props and the everything in terms of like how the dressing room looked. So I wanted to have all that, that you're right. Pepper does look like a mermaid. So I had those discussions with Matthew Solomon and Cleo Blackketter. She was my other costume designer, incredible, about the looks and kind of things that always kind of in the back of your mind, there's that beautiful, there's the mermaid out of the water and the discovery and the possibility for Cassie. So we wanted all the costumes to kind of to show that on a subconscious and also conscious level that you could pick up on.
Yeah, no, I get it. And I'm gonna squeeze in questions. So talk about casting Devyn and Arturo, because Arturo I know is like a Broadway actor, writer, playwright, musician, all of this.
He's incredible. Arturo is he's just so gifted. Went to Yale School of Drama, and it's funny because I was looking for a 59, 60-year-old, gay Black man to play Pepper, and what came, who stepped into my, literally the audition Zoom room was Arturo. And Finley Davidson, our casting director, showed him to me, and, she said, look at, Arturo's incredible, and I want you to see him. And the minute I'd seen so many other actors, and a lot of them were wonderful. And then Arturo just had this incredible, unique spin on Pepper, and made her just so. I loved all the edges. I think Arturo channeled his mother, And just, I loved how kind of like, in spite of herself, she just really, cares for Cassie. But he added a lot of his own little, improvisations and a lot of the Spanish that he spoke and stuff like that. I just said, I want you are Pepper. So he just really just filled that with every color and all those things, all those unique little, touches. Those were all Arturo, which was wonderful. And all the looks too. We went over how his eyebrows were going to be and the wigs to really kind of give that a place of where Arturo came from. The Pepper, the influences from childhood and when she, was going, or when he was going to clubs and seeing these singers and different people. And then, Devyn was a real find. Again, Finley Davidson, and I'd seen a lot of kids. I really was very clear that I wanted to cast a child that was either non-binary or trans.
Yeah.
Just because I think we need to actually support the representation of actors in movies. We don't see enough trans actors in films. And women of color and Latino women and men, we need to see a lot more of that. Mm-hmm. And a lot of different diversity. And I'm a big supporter of that. And so it was I want to give those opportunities. And Devyn had Devyn had all those, the humor and the levels, and also Devyn is very brave. They're very brave. I mean, they did all the diving and the pool stuff, going down with the weights, and it was incredible. And I kept saying to them, please, because I'm directing them underwater and this is the 13-foot tank, let go of the rocks. And we had a safety diver and they would keep going down and down. And I think I was like, oh my God, I'm getting more stressed out. And their mother's like, oh, they're going to be fine. And I'm just like, stop, let go of the rocks. I don't want to be the director that, my lead actor drowns, but they were having so much fun. They pop up. I can do it again. No, that's okay. We got it. But they just had a wonderful, playfulness. And that's also really important because we see how hard it is, what this kid is going through. But at the end of the day, this is a 10-year-old child and they're living their life. And despite what's going on, they're having a lot of fun. Mm. I mean, it's not just all doom and gloom because when they find out this world, it's like the sneaking out. And I used to sneak out a lot when I was a little kid. It was fun.
Never got a chance to sneak out. I tried running away once and got to the end of the street and turned back and said, wait, this don't make no sense.
Yeah. I mean, I would sneak out and I'd say, oh yeah, I'm going here. And then I would, my parents were always busy and it was different back in the 60s, 70s, and it's like, whatever, everybody's busy. But, we just, Devyn was just, they really, they were organically, Cassie. And I just they were also going through a lot of the same things emotionally. They've been bullied at school and they're homeschooled, but bullied in different places, in their town. And, girls have been really nasty to them. And I just said, I want you to use everything. You are Cassie. I don't want you to change your voice. I just want you to be in this moment with Pepper and let us experience what you're feeling. And then I think they did a really beautiful job.
They did. I love the chemistry between Devyn and Arturo. They are the movie. They're the center of it. So like the casting, as you said, the casting director did a really great job, like finding not only the characters individually, but finding actors who could perform together and make this story work. But we have to wrap it up because I know you have more interviews. But congratulations, Fia. Congratulations to you. And Devyn.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Arturo,
thank you. Yes, and also just want to say a huge shout out to Nat Faxon, who did a beautiful job as the dad.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you so much, Carolyn. Really appreciate it. It was a wonderful, was great talking to you about Mermaid. I'm so glad you got so much from it. And thank you for sharing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.